Hi, it's Alexis Hasselberger, time management and productivity coach. So, have you heard of quiet quitting? All these people talking about quiet quitting. And maybe like me, for the first, I don't know, 500 times you heard it, you thought, oh, quiet quitting, what the heck are people talking about? What is this headline? And maybe you just didn't care. And then you finally realized, this is something I should probably learn about. So I got to tell you, what I thought quiet quitting was when I first heard about it, before I, did any research, looked into anything, I just assumed it meant like stopping doing your job and kind of waiting to see how long you would get a paycheck for, right? That's what I had assumed. That's what I thought quiet quitting is. Turns out quiet quitting is something totally different and really bears almost no relationship to quitting at all. Quiet quitting, it appears, is simply, doing your job, doing it well, but confining it to work hours, right? It is the idea that we are not going to let work overtake our entire lives. It is the idea that we are not going to be answering emails and pings and dings and Slack messages on evenings and weekends. It is the idea that we can have a life outside of work and that we can still do our jobs, right? And when I realized this, I actually got a little bit mad because honestly, it sounds to me like quiet quitting is just a negative rebranding of something that's really good for us. Boundaries, right? By this definition, by the definition of, hey, it's doing your job well, just confining it to your work hours, right? I'm a quiet quitter. I've been a quiet quitter my entire career. And you know what? I got promoted at every job I ever had. There is nothing in our world that makes it so that we can't do a good job and keep that to some hours that are confined to work so that we can have a life outside of that. Now, do we have to have super, super strict boundaries like everyone works from 9 to 5? No, like there can be room for a lot of flexibility. But this idea that we have to be always on to be productive, to be good, to be progressing, I just don't agree with that at all. And I think boundaries are really, really necessary for us to be able to enjoy our lives, right? To be able, like, what are we working for anyways, right? To be able to enjoy our lives and also for our mental health and our productivity. There are so many studies that show us that taking real breaks from our work, like in the evenings and on weekends and when we go on vacation, that taking real breaks actually, not only does it do wonders for our mental health, but it also makes us better employees, right? It makes us more productive. It makes us more creative to be able to have those mental breaks. So where do I stand on quiet quitting? I think it's a good thing, right? I think more of us should feel empowered to do a really good job, but put some boundaries around it, right? Because I think that's what most people are talking about when they're talking about quiet quitting. Now, sure, of course, there are some people who are talking about doing the absolute bare minimum. And yep, you're probably not on a growth trajectory if you're doing the absolute bare minimum, right? But this idea that we can't just do our jobs well and just do our jobs well, that it has to somehow encompass every other part of our being, I just don't agree with that. So, how did we get here, right? I think we got here because we have a pretty toxic kind of hustle culture, productivity culture in the US, right? There's some things that are really great about it. We have a lot of innovation. There's a great economy going, all these things, right? But on the other side, there's this kind of drive towards work that is really hard for a lot of us to step aside from. It's kind of all encompassing. And I think that the pandemic made it worse, right? During the pandemic, we've all kind of moved and transitioned into this work from home new normal. And one thing that there's lots of things that have changed, but I think one thing that has really changed is that now boundaries were just obliterated, right? Like we came home, we said, oh, we're going to be doing this for just a few weeks. We kind of put some Band-Aids around things. And then all of a sudden it's 3 years later, right? Or 2.5 years later. And we might not ever have gone in and said, okay, I really need to set some boundaries for what the long haul looks like going forward. It isn't reasonable for me to be on my phone up until the moment I go to sleep and then roll over in the morning and start checking work emails. Like that doesn't work for me, right? But yet that's where a lot of us are. There's no boundary time-wise or physical-wise for our work from our homes, from our lives. And we need to do some work to put some of those boundaries back. So what do we actually do here, right? Like, what do we do? We got here, we are here. Like, what do we do now, right? So I think for all of us, one thing that we could do is to stop using the term quiet quitting when we really just mean good boundaries or reasonable boundaries, right? When we're talking about boundaries, let's talk about boundaries because having boundaries is not at all the same as quitting. Like they are not even in the same zone, right? And then how do you kind of combat this, the fact that our boundaries might have been obliterated. What do we do about that? How do we make sure that we can feel like we're doing a good job, but also have some of these boundaries? So I think one of the things we can do is, if we're not sure if we're doing enough or if we're doing a good job, ask for feedback, right? Because so often what happens is that we are overcompensating because we're just lacking information, right? So just ask. If you feel like, you know what, I have got way too much on my plate, one thing you can do is to make sure to get it all in one place, like put it all into task system, all in one place, prioritize things, and then bring that to your manager and say, hey, here are my priorities, right? Here's what I've prioritized, for right now, for soon, and here's the stuff that's on the back burner. Do you agree with those priorities? That is a much easier conversation and a much more productive one to have than, maybe going to your boss and saying, oh, I'm just so overwhelmed, I'm so overworked, right? And then I want you to just remind yourself on a regular basis that you can be excellent at your job. You can be excellent. You can be producing amazing work, and you can do that during work hours, whatever you decide those hours are. And that you deserve a life outside of work, right? You deserve that. Every single one of us deserves that. So you deserve that too. Remind yourself of that. Now, what if you're a manager and you have been getting pressure from, leadership and other people, like, we got to, put the kibosh on this quiet quitting thing, quiet quitting, this is a big problem, right? What if you're in that position? Or maybe you're even sitting here feeling like, I don't know, I'm not sure if I believe you that quiet quitting is a good thing. I've got all these people on my team and they're not as productive as they used to be. Here's what I would suggest. So I would suggest first, just take an inward look at your company's culture. Are you asking too much of employees? Is your leadership asking too much of employees and you're kind of squeezed in the middle there? Are the expectations actually reasonable? Are they doable in a kind of normal work week, right? Another thing that you can do is to discourage the use of email and Slack on the weekends, right? So that applies to you as well. So if you are going to be sending Slacks and emails on the weekend, by all means, use schedule send, right? So that they're not getting it on a Saturday at 11 p.m. Because if somebody gets it on a Saturday at 11 p.m., even if you say, hey, don't worry about this till Monday, they're worrying about it, right? They're seeing it, it's in their head now, right? So use schedule send. You also can encourage people to take disconnected vacations. So many people that I work with are so worried about taking a vacation without checking email. But you know what? I have never taken a vacation in my entire career where I checked email. And nothing bad ever happened, right? You get back, and what you find out is that a lot of stuff was figured out in your absence. Yay, you work with a bunch of people who are actually really good at their jobs as well. And the second thing is that people will find you if they really need you. If you are not there and somebody really, really needs you and only you, they will find you. They will call you on the telephone, right? They will find you. They will not rely on email. Now, another thing that you can do is to just make meetings and access to information more accessible and more equitable within your company, right? So make sure that meetings are recorded, make sure that meeting notes are sent out. And this way, people who have, we all have lives outside of work, but people have specific things that they need to do at specific times have more leeway, more flexibility. So if somebody needs to attend their kids, little league game, or somebody needs to go into an AA meeting, or, whatever their reason may be, that they still have access to the information. Don't gatekeep information for only people who can show up at a specific time, right? And another thing you might consider is maybe playing with the schedule. Would a 4-day work week work for your company? Are there any things that you could do to help people do their jobs well during work hours? Maybe you don't even need to go that far. Maybe just having a weekly, no meeting day in your team, right? When nobody's meeting, they have a lot of time where they can just get stuff done. So there are a lot of things that you can consider if you're a manager, if you're in leadership, and that quiet quitting has been something that you're worried about. So I would love to know from you. Drop it in the comments. Do you think I'm right? Am I on the right track when it comes to quiet quitting being not a bad thing, but actually just a kind of negative rebrand of good boundaries? Or are you actually really worried about this situation? Do you think I've missed something? Have I got it wrong? Let me know in the comments. And of course, if you would like this type of content every single week, then go ahead and subscribe.
What's up? It is the video editor. I just want to quickly say that only 17.3% of the people that watch us are actually subscribed. So it'd be big help if you subscribed.